Hey, I'm Blair Best. It's Tuesday here on The Story, and tonight, if you live anywhere near the ICE building in South Portland, by now you've likely heard the loud helicopters circling the skies for hours on end. What the Port of Portland's Noise Management Department has to say about it. Plus, a hearing is set this week for the federal government's appeal to the rulings over the weekend, blocking the deployment of the National Guard. But first, in a surprise visit, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem came to Portland today, visiting with the governor and local law enforcement. And it's our big story tonight. But before we get to that, let's start with a live look at the ICE building right now. Portland police still have a few blocks around the building closed off. There are a handful of protesters on scene. Today, Oregon Governor Kotek sent a letter to the commander of the United States Northern Command, part of the Pentagon, in charge of the federalized National Guard units. The governor urged him to demobilize the 200 Oregon National Guard troops and 200 other California National Guard troops in the state, in light of the federal rulings blocking their deployment to federal buildings in Portland over the weekend. When we asked Northern Command about the governor's request, they directed our question to the White House, and we have not heard back. Now, Governor Kotek does not have the authority to demobilize the troops herself since they have been federalized. But back to our big story. It's always noteworthy when a member of the president's cabinet comes to Portland, let alone the head of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. I talked with people down at the ICE building today for their take on the secretary's visit.
Oh, I'm so happy that she is here. I feel so blessed that she would come out here to this city because we need it. We need the attention. We need our politicians to actually stand up for us.
I think it's a big show. I think it's a very expensive, big show. She's going to rush back to Washington and get a pat on the back.
Kyle Aboshi is near the ICE building in South Portland tonight. Kyle, you've been around for several high-profile visitors coming to Portland, but Secretary Noem's visit today was different. Tell us why.
Indeed, typically when a high-ranking official or dignitary comes to town, we know about it. We're given advance warning. We know when they're coming in, who they're meeting with. We're oftentimes involved to come along for a photo op, but that was not the case in this instance. In fact, we didn't even know the secretary was arriving until just this morning. After hearing that news, though, we headed to PDX and caught up with the secretary at a private air terminal. Here's part of that conversation.
Secretary, what do you hope to accomplish by visiting Portland today?
We hope to have peace and secure some partnerships that will keep our officers safe and allow us to enforce federal law.
Do you have any interest in speaking to Portlanders for an objective view of the situation here?
We believe the president has the right to keep every single citizen safe.
Kyle, we know Secretary Noem spoke with Governor Kotek shortly after landing in Portland, and you also caught up with the governor. What did she have to say about that meeting?
We should note that was a hastily called meeting that really wasn't planned. It was something that just came together at the last minute. The governor and staff went to that private air terminal just as I did, hoping to meet with Secretary Noem. Indeed, they sat down for about 20 minutes, a one-on-one meeting. The governor said it was important to her to express concern about public safety, particularly the use of tear gas by federal agents protecting the ICE building. Here's part of that conversation with the governor. What was the substance of your discussion today?
Well, the substance was, how do we make sure everyone can be safe? And my responsibility is to uphold state law, making sure that people can lawfully demonstrate and that they can be safe to do that. And so we talked about the situation at the ICE facility and that it's contained to that one block around the building and that the rest of the city, we're not having issues. Demonstrations have been peaceful and lawful. And trying to say, how do we make sure that people can lawfully demonstrate and that the ICE facility can operate? And that she's meeting with local law enforcement today to have that conversation. And I think it's really important when you have a situation like this, that as governor, I'm speaking directly to the federal government about what are your goals, what are we trying to achieve, and how do we keep everybody safe, because that is the goal.
How would you best characterize the tone of this conversation between the two of you?
I think it was professional and cordial. I mean, she's a former governor, so she knows what my job is. We're trying to talk to each other as people who have to make decisions and keep people safe, and I thought it was a good conversation.
Before we let you go, Kyle, the feds are appealing the rulings over the weekend that blocked the National Guard's deployment here. What do we know about the next steps?
So a hearing has been scheduled at the Ninth Circuit on Thursday morning. At that point, they'll hear oral arguments. Both sides have already provided written briefs to the court for review, arguing their cases on whether the Ninth Circuit should uphold the judge's decision temporarily blocking the National Guard from coming to Portland. But again, oral arguments scheduled for Thursday morning.
Okay, Kyla Boshi in South Portland tonight. Kyle, thank you. Meanwhile, Multnomah County has joined dozens of other local governments in a court filing backing the state of Oregon's lawsuit to block the deployment of the National Guard to Portland. Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson writing, Multnomah County stands united with our partners at the state and city and is here to lend our legal support to the unconstitutional and authoritarian actions of the Trump administration. I'm extremely proud of the many ways Portlanders have come together to protect our home and push back on these ridiculous bullying tactics from the courts to peaceful protest. Multnomah County will continue to do everything in its power to safeguard our rights and oppose federal overreach. Well, after speaking with Governor Kotek today, Secretary Noem met with Portland Police Chief Bob Day, the leader of Oregon State Police, and the Multnomah County Sheriff. Chief Day just finished talking with the media within the past hour or so regarding that meeting, and here's some of what he had to say.
We did speak holistically about the need for a change in the environment and a change in behavior down there, and I'm in agreement with that. My hope would be that we could have a community-led conversation about how we want to continue to express our First Amendment rights. And we have a model in that. We have a model in that for the last several months where we have seen demonstrations numbering in the tens of thousands, and we have not had nearly the police presence that we've had down there.
We're just learning that Secretary Noem also met with Portland Mayor Keith Wilson today. He just sent us a statement saying in part, what Secretary Noem saw today in Portland matches our reports. Portland continues to manage public safety professionally and responsibly, irrespective of the claims of out-of-state social media influencers. I continue to maintain that the tactics used by federal agents at the ICE facility are troubling and likely unconstitutional. And before we move on from Secretary Noem's visit today, a post she made on social media while she was still governor of South Dakota last year is resurfacing some 20 months later. She posted a video clip of her appearing on Sean Hannity's show on Fox News with the caption, "If Joe Biden federalizes the National Guard, that would be a direct attack on states' rights." Over the last several years, we've seen Democrats try to take away our freedoms of religion, assembly, and speech. We can't let them take away our right to defend ourselves, too. South Dakota defends the Constitution. Now, this was back in February of last year. She was referring to President Biden potentially federalizing the National Guard in order to keep them from being used by states like Texas for border security. And despite South Dakota being landlocked and quite some way from the southern border, Noem claimed Biden would use South Dakota National Guard troops. So she joined Texas Governor Greg Abbott in a show of solidarity. So had President Biden federalized the National Guard against the wishes of then Governor Kristi Noem, that would have been a direct attack on states' rights. Her words, not mine. So how is our current situation in Oregon any different, apart from the reason behind the move to federalize troops? The president is trying to federalize the National Guard against the wishes of the state government. In then Governor Kristi Noem's logic, that would seem to be a direct attack on states' rights. And frankly, that's some of the logic involved in the federal judge Karen Immigrant's rulings from over the weekend as well, blocking the deployment of the National Guard. Writing in her initial ruling on Saturday, as soon as the federalized National Guard deploys to Portland, the state of Oregon will suffer an injury to its sovereignty. And as a quick reminder, Judge Immigrant was appointed to her position in 2019 by President Trump. But how do you see it? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Okay, we want to give you a live look at the airport right now at PDX. That's the U.S. Coast Guard plane that Secretary Noem arrived in today. Within just the last few minutes, the door of the plane opened, so we're waiting to see if the Secretary is on her way out of town. We'll keep you posted. We know that this visit has been really different than any other high-profile visit of an official has come to Portland in the past. As Kyla Boshi was explaining earlier, we didn't get any media access. We did see some conservative social media influencers getting access to her today, but the local media in Portland did not receive that same access. So just really interesting things developing. Again, that the plane door has opened and we are expecting her to leave Portland any minute now, we assume. We'll keep you posted. Meanwhile, the rhetoric from the White House regarding Portland continues its drumbeat of doom and gloom despite what we're seeing here at home. Both President Trump and Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller talked about the Rose City on Monday, bringing up the federal judge's weekend rulings that blocked the National Guard deployment.
You look at what's happened with Portland over the years, it's a burning hellhole, and then you have a judge that lost her way, that tries to pretend that like there's no problem. Actually, she's not even saying that. There's a huge problem in Portland. I'll tell you what the problem is: crime.
ICE officers should have to work in a federal building every single day where there are attacks going in, there are attacks going out, where every night there has to be street battle against armed insurrectionists every single night, night after night after night. That's normal. You ask why we need the National Guard, why we need troops? Because it takes hundreds of additional personnel, far beyond the resources of the federal officials working in Portland, to hold and secure a perimeter to provide freedom of movement.
The president was also openly talking about the potential use of the Insurrection Act if his efforts to deploy National Guard troops to U.S. cities continue to be blocked.
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe.
Okay, now it's important to note the differences between the Title 10-12406 authority that the president is trying to use to federalize the National Guard to Portland and what the Insurrection Act would do. The Insurrection Act is a much larger step forward in regards to federal intervention on U.S. soil. It allows federal troops to engage in domestic law enforcement activities, like making arrests and performing searches. While that Title 10 authority prohibits the National Guard from doing things like that, but does allow them to help protect federal officers and property. We did this exercise last night with the Title 10-12406 law, but let's read the actual language of the Insurrection Act to understand the context here. Quote, whenever the president considers that unlawful obstructions, combinations, or assemblages or rebellion against the authority of the United States make it impracticable to enforce the laws of the United States in any state by the ordinary course of judicial proceedings, he may call into federal service such of the militia of any state and use such of the armed forces as he considers necessary to enforce those laws or to suppress the rebellion. And according to the president yesterday, he's not ruling out using the law, at least at this point. The Insurrection Act was last used in 1992 during the deadly LA riots following the acquittal of 4 LA police officers in the beating of Rodney King. But in that case, California's governor requested military aid from then-President George H.W. Bush. Okay, let's talk about the helicopters circling the ICE building. Many people living in South and Southwest Portland say they're being kept up at night due to the noise from those choppers. In fact, one of them flew over the station here in downtown right before our show began. I talked with a few neighbors south of downtown near the ICE building and tried to get concrete answers on who is flying those helicopters and what, if anything, can be done about it. If you live anywhere near the ICE building in South Portland, by now this sounds familiar.
Very, very loud. It's been disturbing us for, what is it, like 2 weeks now?
Seemingly every night around 5 p.m.
Here we go. Yep, here we go.
The helicopters start circling.
Over and over and over again. And it's just hours of it. It's just pain in the butt.
2 nights ago that was extra low. With sometimes they have lights that shine in the windows.
And I'm not sure what the helicopters do. They just circle and make noise. What do they do?
A good question. So we reached out to the Port of Portland, which oversees general aviation activities in the Portland metro area. This alert is now up on their noise management website. It reads, "We are aware of the higher volume of helicopter and propeller airplane activity over South and Southwest Portland. This appears to be related to federal law enforcement and/or military activity and is not a development the Port of Portland can control."
Oh, it's really frustrating because there's just no, we just don't have a voice to speak out and say anything.
A Port of Portland spokesperson declined to go on camera, but said in an email that they've seen an increase in those noise complaints related to helicopters circling South and Southwest Portland. They went on saying military planes and other federally operated aircraft routinely fly into and operate at our airports. They do not typically notify the Port of Portland when they're doing so, as we do not manage or control the airspace. It is not our role to approve, control, deny, or keep an inventory of military or federal agency aircraft operations at our airports.
I think that's terrible. I thought that we were a city and a state that had autonomy from government overreach.
Huge question mark.
Ron Schmidt is on the Port of Portland Citizens Noise Advisory Committee.
And certainly I am concerned about the noise for the citizens of Portland.
Ron says aviation noise can have long-term effects on the neighborhoods below.
Over time, it certainly can have a psychological and ultimately a physical damage.
Waste of taxpayer money, to be honest.
In late September, the FBI arrested 4 people for shining a laser at what the agency said was a Customs and Border Protection helicopter conducting law enforcement in the skies over Portland.
I feel like that's disturbing the peace. Whoever's protesting down by ICE, that's a one-block area, they have the right to protest. The police seem to have it under control. And these helicopters, I don't understand. It seems like an intimidation tactic, and it needs to stop.
Now, we reached out to Customs and Border Protection twice today and have not heard back. We also reached out to ICE about this and also have not heard back. So much of our coverage is focused on the single block around the ICE building in South Portland. But in areas surrounding that one block, and frankly across the rest of Portland, things are business as usual. To give us a little context on just how contained this ICE drama is in South Portland, Evan Watson joins us from just a few blocks away. Evan?
Yeah, Blair, just yesterday, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt urged reporters who are gathered in Washington, D.C. to talk to Portlanders about the conditions on the ground here. She said the Trump administration had heard it was purely civil disobedience, that it was a mess, saying that Portland was under siege. So, taking her recommendation, I came out here today to talk to people in the area surrounding the ICE facility about what they think. Here's what they shared.
You get half a block away from the ICE headquarters or a block away, and it's just like it always is in Portland, beautiful and peaceful and friendly.
To just take the first thing that you hear and blow it out of proportion, I think does a disservice to this area and the people that actually work so hard to make it what it is. I just wish that people would bother to actually look at what it's really like here.
Take from your hat, you're a veteran yourself?
Yes.
Okay. So when you hear things like this is a war zone, what does that mean to you?
They've never seen a real war zone. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, it's a beautiful fall day and clearly not a hellscape. I haven't noticed any commotion on the South Waterfront. I work in person at OHSU. Probably the biggest protest that'll be going on soon is like a naked bike ride protest this weekend, which is just really Portland style.
Now it's important to note, I'm about 2 to 3 blocks up north from the ICE facility in South Portland here. And the reason for that is that we wanted to show the context and different perspective rather than all the video being focused just on that one block around. But as part of that, there are people who live right next door or across the street from the ICE facility who are tired of everything going on. And we've shared their stories on KGW. Some people blame the protesters for causing problems. Other people blame the federal agents for making things worse. But ultimately, when it comes down to people who live and work in this South Waterfront area and all the people that I talked today, they laughed at the idea that this is a burning hellhole or the other words that have been used to describe this area and everything that's happening here. And everyone said, oh my goodness, like, we just want to share our perspective here that this is great, a lovely day, we're out walking dogs, having fun, and this is what it's actually like around the area. We wish more people knew that.
Okay, Evan Watson on the South Waterfront for us tonight. Evan, thank you. Well, coming up next on the story, the Nobel Prizes are being awarded this week, and a scientist who went to high school in Portland is one of the latest winners for her work in the field of medicine. What her work could mean for the future of treating autoimmune diseases. That's when the story returns. Well, a big congratulations to a Nobel Prize winning scientist with Portland roots. Mary Brunko is one of 3 scientists who are sharing this year's Nobel Prize in medicine. Brunko graduated from St. Mary's in downtown Portland in 1979 and now works for the Institute for Systems Biology in Seattle. She, along with 2 others, were recognized for uncovering a key pathway the body uses to keep the immune system in check called peripheral immune tolerance. That research becoming critical in understanding autoimmune diseases.
There's an awful lot of diseases and different conditions that are impacted by either too much immune reaction or not enough. And just understanding, key players in the regulation of the immune system are, makes a huge contribution to the field in general.
The research began with a different scientist in Japan back in 1995, with a breakthrough from Brunko here in the States in 2001, when she and another scientist were investigating mice with an autoimmune disease. They figured out a particular mutation in a single gene was to blame and realized that was what they were seeing in mice could translate to human health as well.
From the DNA level, it was a really small alteration that caused, this massive change to how the immune system works, which would indicate that the whatever it was that was disrupted was a pretty key player in how the immune system works.
2 years later, the Japanese scientist linked Brunko's discoveries with his own, showing that the one gene controls the development of specific cells that can sort of claim the overactive cells causing autoimmune diseases. Now, their collective work is being used to help find better treatments for things like type 1 diabetes, arthritis, and lupus, potentially replacing current autoimmune therapies that suppress the immune system, leaving patients vulnerable to infection. Brunko and the two others will share the prize money of nearly $1.2 million. We're back right after this. Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. And we leave you tonight with another live look at PDX, where we expect Secretary Noem to soon be departing after her surprise visit today to Portland. We'll see you tomorrow night.